This case was hidden because it revealed a systemic failure, a betrayal of trust that should have never happened. But today, I will tell you how a retired investigator uncovered the truth behind a single day that changed everything for a vulnerable man. For years, no one dared to speak of it. It all begins with Michael Carter, a quiet man from Akron, Ohio. He was nearing his 70s, living alone in a modest bungalow tucked away in a cul-de-sac off East Market Street. Widowed for nearly a decade, he had maintained his independence until the insurance company decided otherwise. I remember reading the initial report, an anonymous tip that a pensioner had been dispossessed of his apartment in a single day. It sounded unbelievable. How could a corporation with all its resources pull off such a quiet, ruthless operation? I had my doubts from the start. The first clue was a strange pattern in the insurance company's records. They had issued a new policy, one that seemed standard at first glance. But digging deeper, I found irregularities. The policy was approved in a matter of hours. No usual underwriting process, no in-person interviews, just a few clicks, and it was done. Would you have noticed this detail in the file? This rapid approval was suspicious, especially given the amount of money involved. It didn't match their typical procedure. The next step was to trace the policy's origin. I discovered that the insurance company, a little-known firm called Secure Life, had recently undergone a merger. The new management had a reputation for aggressive tactics, even underhanded ones. But I needed more. On June 14, 2011, Michael Carter's apartment was seized. By whom, I wondered. The official records listed the transfer as a foreclosure, but that didn't add up. Foreclosures usually take weeks, sometimes months. This was done in less than 24 hours. I reached out to the local sheriff's office, only to find that the sheriff's deputies involved had no record of the eviction order. Meanwhile, the insurance company's representatives claimed they had followed all legal procedures. But what procedures? I pulled the court docket. Nothing. No notice, no hearing. Just an abrupt change of ownership. I started to suspect that something was being hidden behind layers of bureaucracy. Didn't this seem strange to you from the very beginning? A pensioner's life turned upside down in a day, with no official record? That's when I began to question the official narrative. I ordered a FOIA request for all documents related to Michael Carter's case. The response was almost too clean: standard forms, signatures that looked forged, signatures that were too perfect. I noticed a pattern. The signatures on the eviction notices didn't match Carter's real signature. Who forged those signatures? That question haunted me. I found out that the person who signed the documents was someone working for a shadow contractor, a middleman with no official record, an untraceable agent wielding legal authority like a blade. It was then I learned that Secure Life had a network, an internal shadow operation, facilitating these quick turnovers, disguising them as legal foreclosures. They used ghost clinics, fake medical reports, even manipulated Social Security and DMV records, a web of deceit designed to silence the victims. Would you have suspected that a simple insurance policy could be part of a larger scheme? I doubted it at first, but the pieces kept falling into place. I uncovered that Carter's family had been pressured, unofficially, to keep quiet. They were told it was simply a mistake, a legal technicality. But I knew better. There was a code among the insiders, an unspoken rule of silence. The Operation Red Moon, I called it, a covert system where the vulnerable were eliminated quietly, their homes seized without due process, their voices silenced. I checked the financial records of Secure Life. They were laundering money, cryptocurrency transactions, shell companies, offshore accounts, all hidden behind layers of encryption. The operation was lucrative and, apparently, protected by a network of corrupt officials and lawyers who looked the other way. The betrayal cut deepest in Michael Carter's case. His trust shattered, his reputation smeared. The family, once supportive, now divided by secrets they couldn't fully understand. Some knew, some pretended not to. The truth was a poison that seeped into every corner of their lives. But I made a mistake. I hesitated too long. I didn't act fast enough to stop the process before Carter's apartment was gone. I kept asking questions, chasing shadows, while the clock kept ticking. I wonder, if I had pushed harder, could I have saved him? Or was it already too late by then? The day Carter was evicted, I remember feeling a strange emptiness. I'd seen corruption, yes, but this felt personal, like a message. Trust no one, not even the system that's supposed to protect you. Eventually, the truth surfaced, thanks to a whistleblower within Secure Life who risked everything to leak internal memos. The operation was called Red Moon because it was supposed to be discreet, shadowy, unstoppable. But leaks happen, and secrets, sooner or later, unravel. By 2014, arrests began. A chain of officials, lawyers, and middlemen were exposed. But the mastermind, the architect, disappeared. Rumors of exile, of living in some distant country, surfaced. No one knew for sure. And Michael Carter? His case was just one of many. The system had turned a blind eye for so long it became complicit. It's still out there, hiding in plain sight, quietly doing its dirty work. Would you have believed the official version? Or would you have dug deeper like I did? I wonder how many others are still waiting for justice. How many more Michaels are out there, silenced forever? If this had happened in your family, what would you have done? Would you have trusted the authorities or fought back? And if this case were investigated today, how do you think it would end? Would the truth finally come out, or would the shadow operation go deeper, hidden behind layers of legal fiction? Every day, I think about what I saw, what I missed, what I could have done differently. The system is supposed to serve, but sometimes it's the biggest threat of all. These files rarely survive to the end. Subscribe while this one is still accessible. You already see this wasn't an accident. Want more? Subscribe. I solved more than one case, and this is only the beginning. Subscribe if you're ready for the next. This file was never meant to be released. Subscribe while it's still here, because the truth doesn't stay buried forever. If you've made it this far, you're already part of the investigation. Subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow with another story that was never meant to be told. Every day I'll post a real case from my archive, investigations I solved that still unsettle me. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and drop a comment. It really helps this channel. Stay safe. See you tomorrow. The story didn't end with Carter's apartment. That was just the first crack in what I now realize was a much larger, more insidious operation. After the initial leak, I pushed harder, digging into the financial networks behind Secure Life. I uncovered shell companies registered in Delaware, offshore accounts in the Caymans, and crypto wallets in hidden servers across the world. It was a labyrinth designed to hide crimes that stretched far beyond Ohio, into states like Texas, California, and even New York. I started connecting dots, linking the shadow contractors to local law enforcement, to legal firms that specialized in quiet settlements. Would you have suspected that a simple insurance claim could lead to this level of corruption? I doubted it at first, but the more I explored, the clearer it became. This wasn't just about money. It was about control, about silencing the vulnerable before they could speak. I found reports from internal audits, documents that had been doctored or deliberately destroyed. An entire department within Secure Life, codenamed Red Moon, was tasked with executing these removals. They used bogus medical reports, fake social security files, even manipulated DMV records to discredit or erase the victims' identities. And the families, those who knew or suspected, were threatened into silence. I learned that in some cases, families who tried to contest the seizures vanished from the records, their voices erased. Was it coincidence or deliberate cover-up? I've seen enough to know the difference. Did you ever wonder what it takes to silence someone? Fear is a powerful tool, but so is betrayal. I uncovered that some of Carter's own neighbors had been pressured, offered hush money, or threatened with legal action if they so much as whispered about what they knew. Why would a corporation go to such lengths? Because they knew the system was fragile. They exploited loopholes, bribed officials, infiltrated local agencies. I found that some of the law enforcement involved had been paid off, small payments, tucked into envelopes, or discreet wire transfers. The more I investigated, the more I realized this wasn't isolated. It was a network, an operation that had been running for at least a decade. The Red Moon team operated like a covert branch, with designated operatives in different states. Their mission: quietly strip assets from the most defenseless, then disappear before anyone noticed. Would you believe that some of these victims were unregistered minors or elderly people with no family? They became easy targets, easy to dismiss, easy to silence. The shadow contractors would produce fake death certificates, fake medical histories, and then push the victims' homes into the hands of the shadow elite. And what about the insurance policies themselves? I found that many had been bought through anonymous LLCs with no real connection to the policyholders. It was as if the victims never truly existed on paper, just ghost identities, easily disposable. I questioned myself. Did I overlook something? Could I have done more? The regret is heavy. I knew that if I'd had more time, more resources, I might have uncovered the entire operation before it claimed another victim. But the clock was always against me. Then came the betrayal I never expected. A trusted contact within the FBI approached me, an agent I had collaborated with for years, but I learned that he had been compromised. The operation's reach was deeper than I thought, infiltrating even federal agencies. He warned me to back off, to forget what I had seen, that the system was too fragile, too corrupt, that some secrets are better left buried. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to believe him. Part of me wanted to expose everything. But the fear was real. The fear that they could silence me too. So I stopped. I turned away, and the operation continued in the shadows, claiming more victims, more homes. Would you have done the same? Or would you have pushed harder, risked everything to blow the lid off? I ask myself that every day, because the truth I uncovered was a poison, one that could unravel everything. I often wonder, how many Michaels are still out there, waiting to be heard? How many families are living in silence, broken and betrayed? And who is watching the watchers? If this had happened in your family, what would you do? Would you trust the system or fight back? Would you believe the official stories or dig for the truth? The more I look back, the clearer it becomes. This wasn't just about a single pensioner. It was about a shadow operation, a silent war on the most vulnerable. A war fought behind locked doors, with signatures forged, lives erased, and silence bought in every corner of the country. If this case were investigated today, how deep would the rabbit hole go? Would the truth finally surface, or would the entire operation be buried again, hidden beneath layers of legal fiction and bureaucratic silence? Every day I wonder how many others know the story but stay quiet. How many are afraid to speak? The system is designed to protect itself, not the people. That's the real danger, when the protectors become the predators. These files rarely survive to the end. Subscribe while this one is still accessible. You already see this wasn't an accident. Want more? Subscribe. I solved more than one case, and this is only the beginning. Subscribe if you're ready for the next. This file was never meant to be released. Subscribe while it's still here, because the truth doesn't stay buried forever. If you've made it this far, you're already part of the investigation. Subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow with another story that was never meant to be told. Every day, I'll post a real case from my archive. Investigations I solved that still unsettle me. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and drop a comment. It really helps this channel. Stay safe. See you tomorrow. The deeper I dug, the more I realized that Michael Carter's case was just the tip of the iceberg. Behind the veneer of legal procedures and corporate paperwork, there was a calculated, cold-blooded machinery designed for one purpose: dispossession, silence, and profit. I uncovered a pattern in the way these operations expanded. Each new victim was tied to an initial seed case, someone with no family, no witnesses, no one to fight back. Secure Life's shadow team would craft a story, fake medical reports, forged signatures, manipulated records, and within hours, the victim's residence was handed over to shell corporations with no real connection to the person. Would you have suspected that such a vast network could be hiding behind a simple insurance policy? I doubted it at first, but the more I examined, the clearer it became. These weren't isolated incidents. This was a systematic, institutionally protected crime. And what about the people inside the system? I found that some employees, low-level clerks and secretaries, had been coerced or bribed into going along. Their silence was bought with promises of future promotions or threats of legal trouble. But the real power lay with the shadow contractors, men and women who operated in the dark, their identities known only to a select few. I tracked some of these operators to a nondescript office building on the outskirts of Fresno, California, a place that looked like any other strip mall, but inside, I found evidence of a whole operation: files, computers, encrypted servers, a command center for Red Moon. They called it that because it was supposed to be discreet, like a secret moon that no one looked at directly. Would you have guessed that behind this quiet facade, they were laundering money through crypto exchanges, funneling profits into untraceable accounts? That's how they kept the operation alive, by hiding the flow of cash behind the veil of digital anonymity. I discovered that some of the victims, like Carter, had been targeted because they had assets, homes, savings, pensions that could be exploited. But others? They were simply inconvenient, elderly, unprotected, and easy to disappear. The operation didn't discriminate. It was about maximizing profit and minimizing risk. And the families? Many knew something was wrong but were too scared or too confused to act. Some had been threatened, warned to stay silent, told that legal technicalities would be the end of them. Others had been bought off with small sums, paid to keep quiet. It was a slow, silent war, fought in courtrooms, in back alleys, behind closed doors. I kept asking myself, if I had the power, what would I do differently? Could I have stopped this? Or was the entire system too corrupt, too deeply embedded in the fabric of local and federal agencies? I look back and wonder, did I miss a clue? Or was it something I was never allowed to see? Then came the betrayal I dreaded most. A trusted lawyer, someone I'd worked with on multiple cases, turned out to be part of the operation. His name was Marcus Hall, and he had been on my team, or so I thought. But I found evidence, hidden emails, encrypted chats that linked him directly to Secure Life's shadow contractors. Why? Because he was paid. Paid to look the other way, to fabricate documents, to ensure the operation's smooth run. His betrayal made me question everything I believed in. How deep does the corruption go? How many others are compromised? And Carter's case? It was just one of many that I now see as a test run, an example they used to perfect their methods. If they could quietly seize a pensioner's apartment in Akron in one day, how many others had fallen prey elsewhere, unnoticed? Would you believe me if I told you that some of these victims were erased from the system entirely? That their identities had been wiped from DMV records? That their social security numbers had been reassigned through fake documentation? It's a ghost story with real bodies behind it. I traveled to the records offices, digging through old files, trying to find traces of victims who had vanished. The more I searched, the more I realized these people had never really been gone. Their lives had simply been stolen, their homes handed over to anonymous corporations, their stories erased. Why? Because the operation's true goal wasn't just asset stripping, it was control, complete, untraceable control over the vulnerable. They wanted to own their lives, then discard them when they were no longer useful. If this had happened to your family, what would you have done? Would you have believed the official stories? Or would you have kept digging like I did? Because the truth behind these disappearances is a web of lies spun so tightly that most never even see it. I've seen enough to know that this isn't just about greed. It's about power, an unchecked, shadowy power that manipulates the very fabric of justice. And the worst part, it's still happening, hidden behind layers of legal shields, operating in the shadows. And this is only one case, one story. But the pattern repeats across the country. A silent, deadly epidemic of dispossession, cloaked in legality, protected by silence. Would you have the courage to confront it? Or would you turn away, convinced it's too big to fight? I ask myself that every day, because I know the truth. Sometimes, the biggest crimes are the ones no one dares to speak about. If you've listened this far, you're searching for the truth. Subscribe. I'll show you the next case. These files rarely survive to the end. Subscribe while this one is still here. You already see this wasn't an accident. Want more? Subscribe. I solved more than one case, and this is only the beginning. Subscribe if you're ready for the next. This file was never meant to be released. Subscribe while it's still accessible, because the truth doesn't stay buried forever. If you've made it this far, you're already part of the investigation. Subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow with another story that was never meant to be told. Every day I'll post a real case from my archive, investigations I solve that still unsettle me. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and drop a comment. Your insights might help uncover what's hidden. Stay safe. See you tomorrow.